Welcome to Nice and Blunt. It's Wednesday, May 21st at 2:45 p.m. Time for another live stream and a mock draft over on Underdog. Let's go. All right, we're hopping into the puppy today. No time to waste. Let's just get in. 20-second pick clock is the tournament. If you want to join, hit that button right now. You know the deal. We'll join right about now. 2 spots left. If you want in, get it while you can. Down to 1 person. We should be going pretty shortly. While we're waiting, I would like to talk about week 17, which, for the sake of best ball, is where all the money is made. If you are trying to maximize the payout, you need to maximize the ceiling in week 17, assuming your team will advance. So these are the matchups. Hopefully we can chase some higher scoring games. Dallas at Washington, there's a chance weather's a factor, but that one should probably be a decent score. And then there's Detroit, Minnesota in a dome. I like that one. Denver, Kansas City, probably more low scoring, should be cold on Christmas in KC. And then the Cleveland Browns hosting Pittsburgh. Maybe that's another snow game. The Titans hosting New Orleans. Maybe a good spot for Cam Ward, but maybe the rushing game is better suited against the Saints. Saints are a good matchup for the run. You're going to be leading in that game, most likely. Then the Colts hosting Jacksonville in a dome. That's a good matchup to chase. The Dolphins in Miami hosting Tampa. That's probably a shootout if Tua is healthy. The Jets and Patriots, though, in New York. That one's probably cold. I think that's more of a run-based game plan over there. Then the Bills host the Eagles. That could be a snow game. I don't know what to make of that. Should be high scoring, but could also be kind of disparaged by the weather. But here we are at pick 3, and because of the potential weather, maybe that's more of a run-based game. Let's go Saquon Barkley at pick 3. We don't always take Saquon because he's hard to get, but as he moves to pick 3, we haven't had that many early picks, especially on the stream. So let's take Saquon at 3. Jonathan, what up, my man? Good to see you. This team, I should say, is probably going to have to hammer wide receiver for a while. That's what I would probably expect. But we'll come back to this in just a sec. Let's finish up on the schedule in week 17. In primetime Sunday night, we have the Niners hosting Chicago. In San Francisco, unless it's raining, that should be a very good fantasy outlook type of matchup, especially in primetime. I like that one a lot. And then on Monday, we also have a great matchup indoors. Falcons hosting Rams. That one feels like a shootout. So I would be targeting this game for sure. I think the Niners-Bears matchup is really enticing. And then Miami, Tampa Bay, and the Colts, Jacksonville, I think is kind of underrated. And then I think Minnesota, Detroit is probably the next biggest shootout. There are 5 other games that are in the flex territory, and the Bengals hosting Arizona might be kind of cold, but should probably be pretty high scoring, a good fantasy game to target. I would like it more if it was in Arizona, but the Packers hosting Baltimore, that's going to be a cold as fuck game. I could see a really bad passing game in this one. And then Las Vegas hosting New York. I think that one's a really underrated shootout. I think the Malik Neighbors Brock Bowers stack is one to target at the end of your draft, at the end of round 1, I should say, in rounds 1 and 2. I think Malik Neighbors and Brock Bowers are going to go off in that matchup in Vegas. And then we have the Chargers hosting Houston. I think the defenses are actually pretty underrated in that one. So that one may not be that high scoring, but a revenge game from a playoff loss, perhaps it does pop off. And then Carolina, Seattle, that one could be a cold one. And this one's also really interesting for like the sake of standings. The league thinks this might be a very relevant game, and that means playoff seeding could have some implications here. So Seattle, Carolina run game might be very valuable in this one too. Like I could see Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker going up against Chuba Hubbard and that having some good value at running back there. But looks like we're back on the clock. It did make its way back to us, and we could take Taylor, we could take Bucky Irving, or we could grab a receiver. I think we're going to grab a receiver. I've taken T. Higgins a lot. I'm going to take a swing that Garrett Wilson does work out. We did mention that matchup against the Patriots in the final week. Week 17 might not be the best, but I do know that Justin Fields tends to lock onto one player. So I think the full round discount on Garrett Wilson, well, it's not my favorite pick. If you need receiver, I can talk myself into it. From an upside standpoint, I can see some big games for Garrett Wilson. So let's grab him and grab another receiver on the way back around. And I really do not like Marvin Harrison here. And Jonathan Taylor has fallen. So I think I'm just going to take Taylor falling 7 spots. It kind of negates any unique aspect of taking Garrett Wilson in the second round. Like, if anything, we're just taking Jonathan Taylor at pick 22 and then Garrett Wilson at 27 for the sake of how this turned out in the ADP. But the value on Taylor is probably worth it. We're not going to get a running back of his caliber later on. So we can ignore wide receiver for a while, but I intended to grab a receiver. I expected Taylor to come off the board. He did not. So that is what it is. Saquon, Garrett Wilson, Jonathan Taylor. We need some more receivers on this team. But Jonathan asking, not best ball related, but there's very little auction format content out there. What's your strategy when it comes to nominations? That's a good question, especially in the context of the subscriber league. I'll be tipping my hand answering this question. But personally, I want to preserve my budget as long as I can. There is a waiting game involved in the auction format that, doesn't apply to snake drafts. Like, you just want the guy you want as quickly as you can get him, and hopefully some players fall. In the auction format, you can dictate if a player you really want will fall or not. And when a player falls, there is a risk-reward ratio where if they represent a tier break, it could ignite a bidding war on that player because they're like the last valuable one available, and some teams are really desperate. And then you can also do the reverse where you have such a bigger budget than everyone else that you can get a really good caliber player at a discount. So you're trying to manage that decision. Early on in an auction format, I'm nominating players I don't want at all. I want to preserve my budget. And then once we get to like roughly 50, 60 players nominated, somewhere around, round 6, that's when I start to keep it reasonable and kind of just look at the positions where it's like, okay, we are running out of receivers. I may not need one. I'm going to nominate a receiver to start perhaps a run on this position that maybe I've loaded up. So it's very strategic to like what your team already has. But in the beginning, I'm tossing up old veterans that I think are on the decline, that are overpriced in the pre-draft value, and that I don't want to be drafting on. I'm nominating someone I have no intention of ever bidding on ever again. Then, as we pivot, I start to highlight some depleted positions on other people's rosters and maybe try and force a run at a position I've already locked up. So if I went running back early, I'll nominate more running backs as I don't really want some of those tier level players. And then once we get late into the double digit rounds, I do not give a fuck. I'm nominating the player I want to hopefully get the price that I'm hoping for. Like, I do not want to be forced in a spot where, I only have $1 bids remaining and whoever I nominate is clearly going to get outbid by other people. I want to preserve those cheap swings for the fence as long as possible. I want the players I'm nominating at the end of the draft. But here we are back on the clock, and we need receivers so bad. I think I'm going to pass on Jayden Daniels. A good price on Jayden Daniels, falling like 4 spots, but I just don't think I can afford to grab a quarterback here. Not when like Jalen Hurts is still on the board and we have Saquon. Team behind us at 2 overall, does get a good value on Jaden Daniels, but I just don't think after taking Saquon and Jonathan Taylor, I'm going to like my team if I ignore receiver on underdog. I think I just have to go on that position. But wow, Chuba Hubbard early. This kind of sucks, but I think the safest, most ideal selection is Calvin Ridley, the last like true wide receiver one remaining that is like unquestioned for targets and also has like a good quarterback tied to him. Like I feel like Pickens is not worth it above Ridley. Waddle I think is way overpriced. Addison you can kind of talk yourself into, but that's the deal with all these players. Like they're all wide receiver twos in offenses that you're hoping throw the ball a lot, and it's not always the case. Then we have Olave, who's like pretty shaky in New Orleans. Godwin, I like Godwin, but the injury risk is, more of a red flag than anything you can point to with Ridley, and it just never looks the same once Ridley's off the board. So we go Metcalf and Ridley. Even if we're dealing with Mason Rudolph as the quarterback, I think Metcalf can still pay off at this price. I still think Metcalf, especially in best ball, will be fine at the like 4 or 5 turn in terms of price. But those are our 2 picks. Just to circle back real quick on your question, Jonathan. Yeah, it really depends on where you are in that auction. Early on, preserve your budget and bring up people that you don't want to be bidding on. It sucks when it's like the first 5 or so picks and one of the players you like are coveting like crazy gets nominated by someone else and you're like, shit, I might have to overspend here, because there's still a lot of teams that have $200 like the max budget available, and that's probably a player that everyone wants. So it is a lot better when the early portion of the draft is just nominations on players you knew for a fact you were never bidding on. If they're off your board, that's perfect earlier on. Then you want to try and just benefit your team where positions you need are going to be preserved and positions you don't need are going to last a little bit longer. And then late, when you're getting down to like $5 or less, just throw up whoever you want and try and get a value. That's my strategy on nominations. But it's a very underrated aspect of like who can manipulate the auction draft the best. The time that you're bringing up certain players. Oh, I got a question for you. Let's start a poll. This is NBA related. This will probably be the only NBA question I'll ever ask this year. But which team wins the NBA Finals? We have 4 left. Is it the Knicks? Is it the Pacers? Is it the Thunder? Or is it the Timberwolves? As someone who lived in Minneapolis recently, I am personally rooting for the Timberwolves. I like Anthony Edwards the most of any of those star players remaining. They did lose last night, though. But I'm rooting for the Timberwolves. That's who I want to see win. And that's probably the only team I actually like legitimately care to watch right now. But I think we just need receiver again. And I think Jakobi Meyers is a very safe player here. That going as wide receiver 40, you're drafting Jakobi Meyers at his floor. There maybe isn't like a massive ceiling. Like if he finishes wide receiver 38 overall on points per game, I wouldn't be that surprised. But Myers stays healthy. He does some of the dirty work. And other than Brock Bowers, I really don't trust any receiver that they have in Las Vegas. Geno does like to throw it a lot, especially on play action. So I do think Jakobi Meyers probably puts up another 1,000-yard season and is worthwhile here at this price. I never regret clicking Jakobi Meyers, but I still think we need some receiver help. We have 2 good running backs. I'm going to pass on David Montgomery, and I think I'm going to take a swing on Matthew Golden. it is extremely rare that the Packers draft a receiver in round one, and it would look pretty sad if he wasn't better than like Christian Watson uh, replacing him on the field. So, excuse me, but I think they're going to target Matthew Golden like crazy. I think they throw the ball a little bit more, and he's a more complete receiver that I just don't think has a skill set they already have on that roster. Like, I think Jaden Reed could have a higher ceiling any given week, but I think it'll be more random and less often that it happens. I think if any player gets into a groove where they're giving you like 75 yards per game and a touchdown on like 5, 6 catches, it would be Matthew Golden. I think he has the most consistent value in that wide receiver rotation, but it's still pretty crowded. It's not like a guarantee we get great value out of Matthew Golden. But as a wide receiver 5 on a team with Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, and Jacoby Myers, like clear alpha number ones on their specific teams, I am willing to gamble that Matthew Golden will piece it together at the right moments for this squad, especially if weather's not a big factor in that Week 17 matchup against the Ravens, then maybe it does turn into a heavy shootout against Lamar, Derrick Henry, and Zay Flowers. I could see a 35, 40-point game, Packers-Ravens, Week 17. So some upside with Matthew Golden. Also opens us up for a Jordan Love stack later on. The price on Jordan Love is pretty affordable. And I feel like we don't really draft him on the stream very much, but I am comfortable with his price. He could have a lot of value. The only receiver being drafted behind him that I think could maybe be more valuable is Brandon Ayuk. And I've said this many times on the channel because I've drafted him and like Godwin so much, but if they're fully healthy, it's a smash pick. That's just not a guarantee. And that's why I don't like the price on Rashee Rice. If you flipped Ayuk and Rashee Rice in the ADP, then I would hate Ayuk instead. But because Ayuk, Godwin, and Rashee Rice are all being valued differently coming off relatively like a same caliber injury. I know Godwin was an ankle, but it was still pretty serious. The fact that Godwin and Ayuk are 3 full rounds cheaper, if not 4 rounds cheaper, that's why I am targeting them. The risk of Rashee Rice not bouncing back is pretty tremendous. It's the same as Ayuk and Godwin, and they're in just as good type of situations where they can outperform Rashee Rice in fantasy, and I wouldn't be surprised. That's my take on it. Mahomes is falling here, but we don't have a Chief on this roster, so it's kind of irrelevant. However, we can take Travis Kelce. We don't take Mahomes very often, but he falls 11 picks here. Let's take him, and we'll go Travis Kelce. We could get sniped, obviously, but we'd be more likely to get sniped if we took Kelce first. Yeah, Kelce's going to be there. And we have Saquon and Taylor, so I'm willing to ignore running back here. I think there's tremendous risk, and just grab this stack. I mean, Kelce's old. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Kelce is not a young athlete anymore in the NFL. Age 35, turns 36 in October. That's definitely on the decline. But last year, he still did have like a top 10 season. He had 97 catches, 130 targets, 823 yards. The problem, it was a career low in touchdowns, only 3 touchdowns, and he did play 16 games, only missed week 18, which is irrelevant in best ball in the first place. So pretty good stats, and it's hard to envision like his targets dipping drastically lower. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way he has like 90 targets next year. Even that is kind of like decent for some of these players at this point. But Kelsey at this price, if you have Mahomes, is totally justified. I still want like a relatively competitive tight end 2, but to grab Mahomes 10 picks past ADP and pair him up with Kelsey, I'm not upset about it. But I can't say I draft Mahomes very often. Like, if Mahomes does not fall, I'm never targeting Mahomes. Really, ever. But Scattaboo after Kelsey, then Bo Nix, Trey Harris, Michael Pittman, Mark Andrews, Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, Charbonnet, and Najee Harris in this round, followed by Herbert, Rashad Bateman, Jared Goff. So this team, we can't go Justin Fields. Fields is already taken. But we can target Cam Ward. We can target Geno Smith. We can also target Jordan Love. I think we're going to be targeting Jordan Love for sure on this team. But so far, I think it's pretty good. We have Mahomes and Kelsey. So QB and tight end is pretty safe. And then Saquon Taylor is really, really competitive at the top for running backs. Like, we don't need good backups here. And then receiver, while it maybe doesn't have like a true alpha, is pretty deep. And I think we can get good contributions from everyone regarding Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Jacoby Myers, and Matthew Golden. There's very little target competition for the top 4, and Golden has tremendous upside. So I like this team a lot so far. But I think we could probably draft a running back at this point. I think that's probably the wise move. I'm going to take Javonte Williams, one of the last starting running backs you can take. Like, there is no one who's as secure for touches at this stage in the draft than Javonte Williams. So last year I did not like Javonte at this price, but that was on Denver's crowded backfield. If you recall, I liked Rico Dowdle's price, which was about 2 rounds cheaper, and that did pay off. So we go with Javonte Williams, and now we don't need to grab Travis Etienne. It's between Jack Betts, Jordan Love, and Hollywood Brown. And I'm going to take Jordan Love. Love to pair with Golden. I'm not super excited about the other stacking options we can get at quarterback. I've taken a lot of Cam Ward, a lot of Geno Smith, especially on the live stream. So let's see how this team turns out with a Jordan Love, Matthew Golden stack instead. However, I kind of regret not taking Hollywood at that pick. If we didn't have 5 like solid receivers already, I think Hollywood Brown probably was the better pick there to stack up with Mahomes. Odds are none of them would have fallen, so not upset about it. Now we're done at quarterback, and if I want to go with 3 tight ends, I can definitely justify that. It'd be pretty awesome if Tucker Kraft fell back to us at 142. I doubt that'll happen, but that'd be pretty cool if it did. Oh, is he already off the board? Oh, yeah. He went pick 122. I didn't even notice that. That feels somewhat appropriate, but when you put into context all the tight ends going later, I don't know how much really any tight end price is justified. Tucker Kraft had the same points per game last year as Pat Freiermuth, and Freiermuth is literally going 4 rounds later. Freiermuth is going like pick 160. Meanwhile, Tucker Kraft going 122. And with George Pickens leaving Pittsburgh, I think you can relatively trust Fryermuth for kind of the same type of production this year. Meanwhile, Kraft played very well, while a tight end drafted above him the same year he was taken missed more than half the season. Luke Musgrave did lose his job, but is still a factor in that offense. Like Darnell Washington is completely irrelevant in Pittsburgh. There is actually a circumstance where Luke Musgrave does get more targets next year than Tucker Kraft. It would probably involve an injury, but he will get enough snaps if healthy to kind of eat into Tucker Kraft's upside on a weekly basis. I'm pretty fine with any of the tight ends that would come back. Meanwhile, at running back, I think uh, the most consistent weekly contributor will be Ray Davis. And if these starting running backs go down, Ray Davis just has as much upside as Garendo as well. We take Garendo a lot. Let's go Ray Davis instead. We also have Saquon. And in week 17, we mentioned the Bills and Eagles do play each other. So if there's a scenario where James Cook is hurt for that matchup, we could have Ray Davis pop off in week 17 going up against Saquon on the same field. So we're going to do that. And while I should probably be grabbing a receiver here, none of them are enticing. So we will just take Dallas Goedert. And that also lines up with the same matchup. Another investment in Philadelphia here with Saquon and Goedert. Goedert did actually have some productive games last year. When healthy, that was the big problem. Goedert missed a significant amount of time. But if we pull up his game log, there are some relatively impressive matchups here for Goedert. Granted, weeks 2, 3, and 4, there were some receivers missing in that offense, but he did have 170 yards on 10 catches in week 3 at the Saints. And then he went down, missed basically 4 games. He went down 3 snaps into week 6. And then when he came back, he did score 2 touchdowns in his next 4 games, but did come back off the field very quickly and missed another 4 weeks. And then at the end of the season, he did have 55 yards on 4 catches. Granted, Jalen Hurts was not even playing in that matchup. So there are some good games from Goedert. It's just a question of, can he actually stay healthy? And that's the reason why his price is pretty appropriate here this late in the draft. But we do see someone reach on Fryermuth, pick 152. And sometimes you can get Pat Fryermuth falling back around late round 14. I think Fryermuth is also a big steal when that happens. But going at the same price as Kyle Pitts, maybe not as enticing, not as good value. But Fancy Dog, good to see you, my friend. Welcome in. Did you answer the poll? Who do you think wins the NBA Finals? I'm rooting Timberwolves. The team after us only has 3 running backs, so I'm going to take Rico Dowdle while we can. I don't like many other running backs after Rico Dowdle, in all honesty. There's not that many like super enticing options. Whereas Dowdle, I know for sure, is getting that role all to himself. And then the pick I would like after this would be Hunter Henry or Mike Gesicki. I'd be comfortable with either of them. But Hunter Henry is going to be the probably number 1 target for a while in that offense again. That's what he was last year with Drake May. And I don't see it changing very much. Meanwhile, Mike Gesicki pretty much needs T. Higgins to go down. And otherwise has like no value at all. So going to pass on Gesicki. I think Hunter Henry is the better tight end. And this makes me feel a lot safer having Kelsey. While we don't have a stack for either of them, I still think the depth behind Kelsey is a better way to go. I guess you don't know much to NBA. Memphis? No, Memphis is out of it. I think the Thunder beat Memphis in that 1-8 matchup. If I'm correct. I can't say I know a ton of basketball anymore these days. Like, I'm a very casual NBA fan. But now that it's down to 4, figured I'd ask. But looks like 2/3 of you say Thunder. I know Knicks were leading in the poll early on. Yeah, Oklahoma City. But one thing I've been noticing a lot, once I hit round like 8 or 9, roughly pick 100, I tend to ignore receiver for like a very long time. That's what I did in this draft. Rounds 8, 9, all the way through to 15. So that's 8 rounds. We took 2 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends, 3 running backs, not a single receiver for the last 8 rounds. It does pay off to draft early at that position, because the guys we were considering were always like just terrible picks. Like, none of them are going to be outscoring the tight ends we even drafted. Like, Hunter Henry is going to have way more fantasy points than Michael Wilson. And that's just like straight up. If they were flex plays, I think they'd be drastically different. Let alone tight end on your roster compared to receiver. If Keenan does fall, I'll grab Keenan. Someone's gonna sign Keenan Allen. I don't see him retiring. He played well enough last year. I think they're just waiting. I would have considered Yoshivas for sure, but I do think Keenan, at some point when he does sign, like, he will probably move up the board by like 25 picks in a matter of like a week. Like, if you told me Keenan Allen signs, what's a team that needs a receiver? Like, the Steelers? You know what I'm saying? Like, if Aaron Rodgers signs and then 4 days later they sign Keenan Allen, I think he would move up to pick 150 very fast. But we only have 2 more picks left and we need receivers the entire way. We take Roman Wilson. I tried to put in Tolbert above him, but for the moment, I guess I had Pittsburgh on the brain. Like, if Keenan signed there, if he doesn't, then Roman Wilson maintains the wide receiver 2 job and is just as valuable as some of these other receivers. Like, at this point, I don't really think it doesn't matter at all. I probably would have taken Jalen Royals if he hadn't been sniped at 194. But Roman Wilson is probably going to go off in the next round. So we have the long turn to wait. Just take him now. But the problem with Jordan Love is, like, grabbing a player to stack with him at this point feels like such a wasted pick. Like, Savion Williams is like a dual threat special teams type of player. I don't really see him contributing very much as a receiver. I think that's a terrible stacking option, honestly, with Jordan Love. Like, that'll be just as valuable as like Bo Melton. You know what I mean? I don't want Savion Williams, but a player like Torrey Horton, and we don't even have Sam Darnold, I think is actually a pretty good pick because Cooper Kupp does not stay healthy. Cooper Kupp is not a safe player to remain healthy at all. And Sam Darnold likes to chuck it deep. Torrey Horton, I believe, has the speed profile to turn into that deep threat. Although they do have Marquez Valdes-Scantling on that roster, I think as the season progresses, I think they would like to see what Torrey Horton can offer. I would expect it more likely that Torrey Horton emerges over MVS. I think MVS getting cut is more likely than MVS taking that job from Torrey Horton. He's 6'3", 196, runs a 4.4. Drafted in the 5th round, but I kind of feel like this last draft, there wasn't a big discrepancy in terms of draft day capital. And he is coming off an injury. Only played 5 games last year, 353 yards on 26 catches. But the 2 seasons prior for Colorado State, he played all 4 years in college, transferred out of Nevada to Colorado State. He had over 1,130 yards in back-to-back years with 8 touchdowns in both of them. So a very productive player, not exactly like the toughest conference to be playing in college football, but still relatively impressive, consistent production as both a sophomore and a junior. I'm willing to throw out senior year, given he only played 5 games total. And that injury did limit him. So that's why I think he fell to round 5. But I think given the Seahawks don't have a lot invested in other receivers on the depth chart, I think he has a legit chance to emerge. And as long as we don't get sniped here, we will take him. Yeah, he's still on the board. We're going to go Torrey Horton. One of my recent favorite picks at receiver in this range. I think when you compare him versus Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I would much rather take this gamble on Torrey Horton in Seattle. But this team is pretty interesting. I think there's a very high ceiling for this team. We have Mahomes stacked up with Travis Kelce. We have Jordan Love stacked up with Matthew Golden. And then running back is effing loaded. We have Saquon, Taylor, Javonte, Ray Davis, and Rico Dowdle. So we don't need anything really from Javonte, Ray Davis, and Dowdle. But when they do contribute, we can get some 20-point games to fill in the cracks. But we have 2 alphas at running back. That's going to be really nice in the long run. Then receiver is deep enough where I do not have any concerns. We have Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, Ridley, Jacoby Myers, Matthew Golden, Keenan Allen, Roman Wilson, and Torrey Horton. We could have considered an Aaron Rodgers selection. We have 2 Steelers receivers. And then at tight end, like I mentioned, we had Kelce stacked up with Mahomes. And then unstacked, we have Goddard and Hunter Henry, but pretty competitive trio here. I do feel good about this roster. And with that, let's draft another one. We're going to do one more. And we are hopping back into a puppy. Nothing crazy today in terms of prices. We're doing the 20-second pick clock. If you want in, go ahead and hit that button. I'm on a 5-second delay, so I'll hit it right now. Fantasy Dog likes the Allen pick at ADP. Yeah, if Keenan signs, there's no way his ADP doesn't fly up the board fast. So as he's fallen, obviously there's the risk he doesn't sign with anyone, but he definitely feels like a potential value. We finally get pick 1. It's been a long time coming. We are definitely not passing up Ja'Marr Chase, as it's extremely difficult to ever draft Ja'Marr if you don't have pick 1. So we'll take Chase here. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's a pretty obvious selection, especially going Saquon with the last one. We're grabbing receiver round 1 this time around. Is this in relation to Torrey Horton? Says he's 6'3" on Player Profiler. Best comp is chosen Robbie Anderson. Anderson had some good years for the Jets, actually. His early career, I should say, was pretty good in fantasy, actually. He was a good deep threat. So that's what we're hoping Torrey Horton can become. But the draft has begun. We are definitely taking Ja'Marr Chase. The luxury of the wide receiver 1. You gotta love it. If you're in a typical redraft format, you can argue, you should not be taking Jamar Chase, but that's because we have to start 3 receivers on underdog. It's the clear pick, in my opinion. Oh, sorry about that, man. Not the end of the world. We'll be back here for sure. We do it every Monday and Friday, and then most Wednesdays. I think I missed last Wednesday, so I can't say every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But in general, there's going to be plenty more opportunities. It's only May. No worries on missing it, man. Save your money. But I have been noticing Jahmyr Gibbs falling in these drafts. This is an interesting round 1. We see St. Brown go at pick 6. Then Puka above Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs falls to pick 8. Then Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Ashton Genty, and Christian McCaffrey at pick 13. Next time, I'll give you a little more momentary notice. We'll have a slight pause before I announce it next time. How about that? Welcome, Jason Calhoun, runner-up in last year's subscriber league. Round of applause for second place. Easy to say when you win first on a major comeback. Man, I was sweating that championship matchup from Wednesday on when the Steelers defense got me -1. I still can't believe I pulled out the comeback, bro. You had Mahomes and the Chiefs defense, and you put up like 45 points. Meanwhile, I had Nico Collins and the Steelers defense, and I was at like 6 points. Oh, yeah. That was such a good matchup, man. That Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown sealing it was very fun to watch. Okay. We get sniped on T. Higgins. We're not going to have the stack. Josh Jacobs is here. I think drafting Josh Jacobs is a very wise decision when we go chase in round 1. So, going to let the timer expire. Want as much time to think about this as I can. We don't have access to T. Higgins. We took Garrett Wilson in the last one. I hate Marvin Harrison at this price. I think Tyreek Hill's a little overpriced. I'm comfortable with Terry. I'm comfortable with JSN. I take Devontae Adams a lot, but let's go Rashee Rice. We never take Rashee Rice. We've shit on this pick many times. But for the sake of mixing it up, let's take Rashee Rice. And because we are at the turn, if there is ever a time to be reaching on a player, it is when you have to wait 24 picks to get your next one. So we'll find out how we like this, but we did notice that we got Mahomes at like a huge discount in the last draft. And if you told me the same thing happened, or like on that last team, if I had known Mahomes would have made it to me, it would have been nice to have another stacking option in round 3 with Mahomes. Like if I had taken Rashee Rice instead of Garrett Wilson on the last team, I think that team would have been really, really good for the sake of best ball. So let's take that gamble. It likely doesn't happen, but we had pick 3 and it did. So maybe we get Mahomes to fall to us at 96 in this draft. But it wasn't just one of your Lions. I had 4 players in that game. We had Goff, we had J-Mo, we had Gibbs, and then we also had Isaac Guerrero. J-Mo, I think, had 2 touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown and then a receiving touchdown, I think. So the triple stack killed you. But I won't rub it in anymore. Probably not fun to relive. But in all honesty, I would kill to lose my fantasy championship this weekend. I would love it if we were in the dead of winter, late December, and I was vying for second or first prize in the fantasy championship this upcoming weekend. The thrill that provides, even if you don't take home the chip, I would love that right now. But it's only May. We gotta wait. Oh, yes, indeed. In case you would like a chance at the Subscriber League Championship yourself, if you have not participated in the Subscriber League, you can claim a spot. Email me at niceandblunt@gmail.com, subject line league, and claim your spot now. I don't think I've added those instructions to the description yet. But if you're watching, if you'd like to join the Subscriber League, if you wanted to last year and didn't have a chance, you can do that right now. The email is niceandblunt@gmail.com. Let me know you'd like one of those spots in this year's Subscriber League. It's an auction draft, and it's very fun. The buy-in is also $50. You have your spot reserved, my friend, especially letting me know you would like to do it again. Yeah, your spot's locked up. There's usually like 2 or 3 people that dip out every year. 2, 3 new people. But we've had mostly consistent participation in the Subscriber League. Last year was year 3. Awesome, man. Can't wait for that. Anyways, we are back on the clock. We have Jameson Williams available. I think we'll go JMO here at pick 48. That allows us to move off of the position. And as much as I like George Kittle here, I think Joe Mixon's not a bad pick. I don't often get the stack opportunities. We're going to take Joe Burrow. Let's just take Joe Burrow. If we pass on him, there's no chance he makes it back around. The team at 3 has T. Higgins. And there's also the team with Chase Brown in the number 2 slot. So we have Jamar Chase, Rashee Rice, and Jameson Williams on this team. At quarterback, we have Joe Burrow, and then our RB1 is Josh Jacobs. I think a very valuable pick there at 24. Best running back on the board. In a tier of his own. I don't think Chase Brown, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams are in the same tier as Josh Jacobs. So, on one hand, the first 2 picks on this team, I think were very safe. The last 3 picks, I think are kind of very risky. Like, other than the stack, there's no justification to be drafting Joe Burrow here, especially above Jalen Hurts when there's no rushing upside available with Burrow. The only thing Burrow has that Hurts doesn't is like consistent health at the end of the season. And Burrow has actually missed the end of the season just 2 years ago. So that's not even like a huge advantage. But for some reason, Jalen Hurts often misses like the last 2 weeks of the season for some reason. It happens a lot where they get to week like 15 and Jalen Hurts goes down. We've seen backup quarterbacks at the end of the year fill in for Hurts pretty consistently in like the fantasy championship. But Jameson Williams, kind of a liability. Definitely a risky option as Ben Johnson leaves Detroit. But no receivers really fell. There was no really good values. Like usually Cortland Sutton is still on the board. He went pick 37, so that was a bummer. And we took DK Metcalf in the last draft, so that's why I passed on Metcalf. And then that Rashee Rice selection, that's a huge gamble. Obviously now I probably don't even want to draft Mahomes with Burrow. So it's fine, but there's a wide range of outcomes with both Rashee Rice and Jameson Williams that increases the risk on this roster. After our Joe Burrow pick, though, we see Metcalf, Mixon, Jalen Hurts, George Kittle, Kenneth Walker. That's a high price on Kenneth Walker. I mean, half a round, but still. George Pickens, Chuba Hubbard, Jalen Waddle. RJ Harvey falls to 58. I like this price on Harvey a lot more than at the turn. Calvin Ridley, Jordan Addison, Ricky Pearsall, Chris Olave, Travion Henderson. The price on Pearsall is all the way over the board. Like it's all over the board. I've seen Pearsall now go at 61. I think that's the highest I've ever seen Pearsall go. Yesterday off the live stream, I've seen Pearsall go 83. I've seen Pearsall go at the end of round 7. Not a definitive understanding of the values on the Niners receivers. Like, it doesn't really make much sense where they're all going. I'm going to take Sam Laporta here. We have Jameson Williams. I'm going to draft Sam Laporta. But do we go running back or receiver? I'm going to take David Montgomery. We're very invested in Detroit, but they should still be pretty good. And I know for a fact that the running backs that go off in the next 25 picks put me in a completely different environment. We are not looking at the same type of options on the next pick. So 3 straight picks that are not receivers could be a problem. But a very balanced roster so far. We have our quarterback, our tight end, 2 running backs, 3 receivers. Every other pick at this point is to fill out the flex spot. Christian Ramos asking, how are you feeling about Amon-Ra with the new coach? I like St. Brown more this year than I think I liked him last year. I think last year St. Brown was like my definitive wide receiver 5. This year he's my wide receiver 4. I think St. Brown is extremely safe. And with the new coaching staff, I think they're going to involve him even more in the game plan. I think he's going to take over a little bit more. I think some of those flashy shots to JMO are going to turn into safer checkdowns to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think his target share increases as opposed to last year. I think he's very safe. I think in redraft, he's the most consistent option outside the top 3 at receiver. I have reached on him as well. He's actually one of my most exposed wide receiver options in round 1. If I'm taking someone after CeeDee Lamb, it's usually Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he goes at pick 6 on this team. I think that's justified. I do have him, Puka, and Neighbors in the same tier, but I think from a guaranteed safety net standpoint, I like St. Brown the most to keep his value from last season. Puka should be fine, has that elite potential, but I actually think Devontae Adams is a legit threat, especially in the red zone. Not the same type of threat that Cooper Kupp has been the last 2 seasons. Kupp has been dealing with a ton of injuries. Adams has been staying healthy, and Adams is such a good player in the red zone that I think it could really, really take away from what we see out of Puka near the red zone. So right now my rankings are Ja'Marr Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. Only reason is because I don't trust JJ McCarthy as much as I trust Dak. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors at wide receiver 6. But I mentioned we'd have a decision to make on Mahomes here. And it looks like it's going to happen. Unless this team goes for that Kelsey stack. No, they do. Probably saves us from ourselves because we already have Burrow. But, dang. Given it was 1 pick away, I kind of wish I had it. We're going to take a shot on Jaden Higgins here. I do not want Cam Scattaboo or Luther Burden. Meanwhile, we've seen a lot of success from the CJ Stroud wide receiver 2. And it looks most likely poised to be Jaden Higgins. But we're going to draft Trey Harris, a couple of rookies. I think both of them are more valuable than Luther Burden. There's at least a bigger target share for both of them than Luther Burden. But very risky selections. Not guarantees to pay off. We just ignored receiver for a while. And honestly, it probably was a good thing that we got sniped on Mahomes, because if I took another quarterback there, I would have been very enticed to take Kelsey, and we would have gotten completely buried at receiver. Grapefruit says they have the same bye as well. Is that the case? It is, yeah. Week 10. That, it's not the end of the world. You can definitely get by with it, but taking a 0 is never ideal. And it would have made me feel more inclined to grab a third. And that would have been terrible for this roster. But because we passed on receiver so much, like, taking Mahomes and Kelsey there would have been really, really bad. I do see some upside for Luther Burden, but I think because they drafted Colston Loveland in the first, I don't really trust all 4 receivers to pay off. I think he's clearly the number 3. I'd be, even if he gets the slot role, like, does that mean he's ahead of Rome Odunze? I don't think so. Does that mean he's ahead of DJ Moore? I really doubt it. And then he's competing with Loveland for, like, somewhat similar targets in the middle of the field. You know, like, I think it's so crowded there that every Chicago Bear is going like half a round to like a full round or two too early. Like, Loveland going here at 101 above Luther Burden is probably correct. I think Loveland probably gets more targets than Burden, but they should both probably be going in like the 11th round. This person reached on Loveland by like 20 picks. The team with Loveland, I think, is this one. Let's pull their team up. ADP 115, took him 101, so trying to get ahead of the Caleb Williams team, I guess. That's the only thing that makes sense, but like, I would not be taking Loveland unstacked in an extremely crowded offense. The only reason I think they did it is for the Week 17 Chicago San Francisco correlation. That's the only thing I can assume. What's weird about this story with Caleb and his dad, like, this all happened last year before he was drafted. And like, it's not like Eberflus set him up to succeed, you know what I mean? Like, it seems to be like their fears were correct, and it happened like last year, and I don't know why it's like coming out again right now. It's really weird. I don't think it matters that much. I don't think he's saying that these days. I think if anything, like, he knows not to say that publicly. But there's such little stuff to talk about at this time of year. Like, these kind of petty stories are making major headlines, and it's kind of like unjustified. Like, I don't think the Bill Belichick story with his girlfriend is that big of a deal. You know, if it wasn't May and there's nothing to really draw our attention to other things, like, you know what I mean? But I'll take Marvin Mims. Looking into some Marvin Mims stats, I think he's interesting. We could take Javonte again, but I'm going to pass. I'm going to go Marvin Mims. And we have 6 receivers. I'm going to grab Kyle Williams and call it done. This is a very risky group of receivers, but we miss out on the Jared Goff stack. We got sniped on Goff. That's who I was targeting with Laporta and Jameson Williams. And because of it, we just grab some of the best receivers available. Let's talk about Marvin Mims really quick, because for a while I was like, that's a terrible pick and very inflated from last year's like late season production in the fantasy playoffs. But the more you look into Marvin Mims, there's actually a lot of progression from him that points to some major success in fantasy. So obviously he had a rookie quarterback, and the first half of the year is something you can kind of excuse with a rookie quarterback. Like, I don't really want to care too much about weeks 1 through 9 with a rookie quarterback. If anything, I care more about the last 8 games of the season. And if we only look at weeks 10 through 18, Marvin Mims actually has like really, really good stats with Bo Nix. So in these 8 games, he's averaging 4.6 targets, 4 catches per game for 56 yards per game, and 6 touchdowns. So that's 0.8 touchdowns per game. Also an extra 3 rushing yards every week. Does have some involvement in the return game. So there's also the chance that randomly he scores a touchdown that way. But if we're just looking at receiving numbers, we already have 8 points as a floor from just yardage and catches alone in the second half of last season. 8 points per game from wide receiver, like 60 off the board, is not that bad. Then we're getting a very high touchdown rate, and if we multiply, it's 6 touchdowns in 8 games, so that's 3 every 4 weeks. That's 4.5 points from just touchdowns. That is a total of 12.5 points in fantasy per game from Marvin Mims the last 8 games of the season last year. I think if you have Bo Nix, it's a completely justified pick, and it's kind of just like Rashad Bateman, like we're hoping for some deep touchdowns. I'm perfectly fine taking Marvin Mims at ADP at this time. Marvin Mims actually could be a major breakout candidate in fantasy this year. So it is risky, but we're drafting Rashid Shaheed a round higher, and Rashid Shaheed is coming off a major injury with no quarterback at all to speak of. Like, you want to bet on Tyler Shuck, or you want to bet on Bo Nix year 2 with Sean Payton, when Marvin Mims was clearly emerging as his number 2 target last year. Like, I know they bring in Evan Ingram, but that's a completely different role on the offense that he occupies. Like, Evan Ingram and Marvin Mims are not competing for the same targets. If anything, Courtland Sutton is competing with Evan Ingram for some of those targets. Mims is the deep threat. Mims has some tremendous upside. Unless Pat Bryant, the rookie, does pay off, Marvin Mims actually has tremendous value if he can continue where he left off in the second half of last season. So I think I was sleeping on Mims a little bit too much, but as we pay closer attention, dig a little deeper, Marvin Mims is actually a very, very solid pick. We have Jacobs and David Montgomery. So running back is actually not very safe at all. We're done at receiver. So I think at this turn, we're probably just drafting 2 running backs and then taking like whatever value at quarterback we get later on. I will grab Rachaad White. I think from a weekly standpoint, that's decent value. And then I'm tempted to go with Ray Davis as the number 2. It's either Ray Davis or Isaac Guerendo. Let's go Ray Davis. Jordan James is a bit of a threat. And if I had a better running back 2 and 3, someone who's going to contribute a lot more, I'd feel more comfortable taking the gamble on Isaac Guerendo. Because the thing about Guerendo is if Christian McCaffrey's available and healthy, Guerendo's not seeing the field. Guerendo's not getting more than like 4 or 5 touches a game. That is worthless. So because I need maybe a little more contribution from running back 4 on this roster, because we waited so long to grab one, that's my tiebreaker why I will take Ray Davis above Guerendo. But if they end up starting any given week, their ceiling is pretty much the same. Like Ray Davis can give you 20 points just as easily as Isaac Guerendo. So we'll take him. I also think Rachaad White still has a valuable receiving role in that offense. And just like Ray Davis, going to give us a few more weekly contributions, even if Bucky Irving doesn't go down. But again, if Bucky does go down, we have a top 15 running back on our hands. We've seen Rashad perform at that level before. But Fantasy Dog likes the picks. I look into some stats for you, man. I try not to just pull out all this info out of my ass. Try and do some math. That's what I've been doing those last weeks. I've been doing a lot of spreadsheets. I wanted to get all my spreadsheets kind of done before June comes around. Anyways, Grapefruit saying Caleb was complaining about the coaches not sitting with him and watching game film. I mean, I would prefer if these weren't public stories. I'll give you that. I would much rather have a quarterback that goes through this and solves it in-house. This does not need to be a public talking point. However, on its face, the coaches should absolutely be watching film with him. Like, why the fuck would you want your rookie to do that alone? Fancy Dog asking, what is a spreadsheet? I look into the stats. I compile the stats. I can pull them up, but I'd rather do it in some videos than here on the stream because I don't really want to be fumbling around with the Google Docs and stuff. But it's just a compilation of all the stats from last year. I've got the game logs for every player and like their overall season totals. And then I also have some, other columns on the spreadsheet where I'm trying to bring that down into per game numbers so that we can kind of get rid of like injuries. And I'm kind of looking into some of the stretches of their seasons that are maybe like a little bit unique, like try and divide some games with certain players with like let's take Cleveland Browns players. I have stats on Browns receivers with Deshaun Watson, with Jameis Winston, and then with like any other quarterback. And obviously the stats are going to look way better with Jameis Winston than with Deshaun Watson. So trying to like differentiate what is the ceiling, what is the floor in some like unique scenarios such as that. That's what I do on the spreadsheets. Shit. This is bad. We're going to take Gesicki for obvious reasons. We have Joe Burrow. And with Laporta, that's a combo I can probably just ignore any other tight end later on. We need another quarterback for sure. And we don't have anyone to stack with Cam Ward. So I'll take Anthony Richardson. Let's just say fuck it. Richardson might not play. No, scratch that. He will play. Richardson's going to get some games. He probably doesn't play more than half the season. I can easily see Daniel Jones getting half the starts with the Colts. That's definitely possible. But let's review the team. We have 3 more picks on this team, and we don't need that many holes to fill. Like, we have Burrow and Richardson. I'd like another quarterback. And honestly, I'm thinking we can maybe just grab Daniel Jones. You know, like the Colts quarterback situation is going to have value. There is some tremendous upside. We saw Joe Flacco put up some big-ass games last year filling in for Richardson. And if we want, we can just grab both, because I think I can get away with just one more running back on this team. I have 3 more picks, though. So I can draft another 2. I think I'm done at receiver. We have Jamar Chase, Rashee Rice, Jameson Williams, Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris, Marvin Mims, Kyle Williams. And then tight end, I think, is done as well. We have Laporta and Gesicki. That's the beauty of drafting that early Sam Laporta. We do not need a third tight end on this team at all. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go running back, quarterback to close out this draft. I think that's going to make the teams pretty good. Fantasy Dog saying Roschon, take Jones. Yeah, Daniel Jones. Especially with no stacks, like Daniel Jones also has rushing value, and may have more starts. So relying on Richardson like this is worth it. But Dobbins, I'm not trying to draft Dobbins too much, man. Dobbins is probably going to stay in LA with the Chargers. He had that unrestricted free agent tender given to him, and I don't think anyone's going to pay him more. I think he's staying with LA as the third stringer. And that is not super valuable in my opinion. After drafting Omarion Hampton, that's not like a huge role. You need one of those other running backs to go down. And Najee, if anything, always stays healthy. So that's a bad bet on Dobbins. It could work out, you know, like there's a chance it works out. He was really talented last year, but it needs Hampton to go down. Hampton would have to get hurt, and then Dobbins would have to be way more effective than Najee straight up. And after like 3 games of a split committee, he just like clearly emerges as the better player and takes over. So there's a chance it happens. He was really valuable for them last year, but drafting Omarion Hampton in round 1 and bringing in Najee to replace Gus Edwards, that's a much different competition in that running back room than it was last year. So that's why I'm not targeting Dobbins. I'm probably targeting Marshawn Lloyd here as a handcuff to Jacobs, because we are so like committed to Jacobs. If he misses, like, let's say Jacobs misses like 3 or 4 games next season, that could be the difference between us making the playoffs and missing it and having the correlating weeks of Marshawn Lloyd as the running back 1 in Green Bay would be super convenient. So I'm actually pro handcuff, especially in best ball, because you don't have to get lucky that the weeks line up. The weeks are quickly going to line up. If Marshawn Lloyd is ever valuable, it's because Josh Jacobs isn't. And that way we're not fumbling for DJ Giddens to pay off. But, oh shit, I'm back on the clock. Maybe we go DJ Giddens. No, we'll go Jordan James. I've actually taken a lot of DJ Giddens in other tournaments, so not dying to take him. And we passed on Isaac Garendo this time when we took Rachaad White, Ray Davis. We passed on him. And under that logic, it's because Garendo maybe doesn't pay off. And I kind of feel like we have a good enough 5 where like the upside of Jordan James, if he does hit, is so valuable that this is kind of like a luxury selection. I'm willing to take him. Yeah, there's nothing else to talk about. That's the only reason that shit is relevant. At this point, good for Belichick, you know? Good for Belichick. But so many other things going on in the world that they want to distract you from with this type of shit. Like what's going on in the Middle East has been really interesting these last 2 weeks. Things are changing and they just want any excuse to talk about any fucking thing else. Oh, did you hear about Caleb Williams not wanting to go to the Bears last year? Anything else but current events. Yo, what is going on in the chat? You don't need to give me the details. It's fine. Okay, so just to wrap up this team, I think this will be the end of the stream. The team worked out okay, but I still feel like we gambled heavily at receiver in rounds 3 and 4. We took Ja'Marr Chase, Josh Jacobs, Rashee Rice, Jameson Williams. Then Joe Burrow, Sam Laporta, David Montgomery. And then at receiver, we're hoping that Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris, Marvin Mims, and Kyle Williams can all pay off and fill out this receiving core with just 7. If I didn't have Ja'Marr Chase, I would not feel comfortable at all with this strategy. But that's the luxury of Ja'Marr Chase. You know he's in your lineup like 16 out of 17 weeks with like 15 plus points. Ja'Marr Chase is good enough to lean on, or I'm willing to risk it. But running back, I think filled out okay with Rachaad White, Ray Davis, Marshawn Lloyd, and Jordan James. Jordan James may be a 0, but you can also say that about literally any other running back going at this point. So taking the swing on the Niners backfield. At quarterback, we have Joe Burrow stacked up with Ja'Marr Chase and Mike Gesicki. And then we have Anthony Richardson as our QB2. We're planning to take Daniel Jones with the final pick. So we've got the Bengals quarterback, Joe Burrow, and then the Colts quarterback on lock. However, we may be getting 0 from these last 2 picks. It's possible that Daniel Jones and Jordan James give me nothing. But if that's the case, then it means my other players do well. At least Richardson does well. Maybe none of the running backs benefit, though. But yeah, I think it's a solid team. I have been becoming a lot more pro handcuff in best ball. Like I think it makes so much sense, especially when you like don't have great depth at the position. Like if you're betting on Josh Jacobs at such a high rate, you're really betting on the Packers running back room. And if Jacobs goes down, it craters your team, except when you have the perfect running back to fill in during those weeks. So it applies obviously not just to Green Bay, but literally every team. And maybe I'm not going to do it with every single handcuff. Like I'm probably not handcuffing David Montgomery to Jahmyr Gibbs. That's very expensive. But I do think it's a good strategy when you punt on depth for a very long time. Yeah, solid team. I did take Daniel Jones. It's not showing it, but we did take Daniel Jones. And then tight end, I'm starting to really like Laporta, actually, at his price. Laporta started to play really well at the end of the season. I'll show you the stats on Laporta real quick, and then we'll say goodbye. So Laporta only missed 1 game last year, but he was not fully healthy. He was inactive in week 11. And before that, he only had one game with over 88% of snaps, and he actually had a lot of games under 80%. So if we only look at the first 9 games of the season, this stat right here, offensive snap percentage, he averaged 77% of snaps, and that's still a high number. That's still pretty good, but based on his role on the team, it is nothing compared to what he does after he misses this game in week 11. He recovers from the injury, and then the rest of the season he averages 94% of snaps. That is way, way different than 77. So he's on the field pretty much every single play, and in this stretch he has way more productive numbers than before. His minimum target share any given week is 6 targets. He has a week with 10. And if you look at the early part of the season, the maximum amount of targets he had was 6. There was a week with 1, a few weeks with 2, and then less than 6 in every other game for the most part. So his targets absolutely get bolstered as he gets healthier, and obviously that leads to more production. He has 4 touchdowns in those final 7 games. Before that, he only had 3 touchdowns in the first 9. He also has multiple games with over 60 yards receiving. And while you can also say that on this side of the board, he has fewer in a larger sample size, he also has more games with nothing to really show for it. So Laporta played far better in the second half of the year, and it was tied to his health. If we can maintain a 90+% snap share from Laporta next season, then Laporta is going to average 11 plus fantasy points per game, and he will be a top 4 tight end. Guaranteed. There's a chance he could be the tight end 1. Once again, he did do that in his rookie season. So I am liking the price on Laporta, and it does feel like a luxury to have that type of player where you only need to draft one other tight end the rest of the way. So this team is a little shaky at receiver, but otherwise I think good enough to compete. I like it. Let's hope it works out. And that's going to be it for this live stream. So if you enjoyed, hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. Hit that like button if you're still watching and you haven't done so either. But we'll be back for another stream on Friday. We'll be doing some drafts, and I will be trying to get you some rankings videos and win-loss pick prediction videos as well over the coming weeks. Look out for that. I will post at least one of those before the weekend is over. We'll probably record that today or tomorrow and edit it over the weekend. But that's it for me. Peace out, everyone. I hope you have a great Wednesday evening, and I'll see you next time on the stream. Have a good one. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.